In a world where good comics are made into bad movies, three nerds with their Overstreet price guides at the ready fight to educate you about the truth of the best comic book stories. The hour of comics is upon us with hosts John Seymour, Keith Bliss, and Jason Gurin. I can
Oh, you
deal
didn't
with
tell
it.
me we were already recording.
This is the best part. I never want anyone to catch on that I'm already recording because I use my judgment and I take out what should not be in. So
So he leaves everything in, basically, is what he's telling
I
you.
leave everything in.
I'm not, to be honest, I'm not worried about it. So.
Make sure everyone knows that you're a blatant racist and all that. Yeah, that's
Hmm.
it'll be fine. It'll be fine.
No
So,
big deal.
on that very interesting note, we are here now. We have a bullshit hour regular in Dave Aguilar. He's here to talk about Fantastic Four versus X-Men, the classic 1987 story. Dave, how are you today?
I've been fighting a cold for 2.5 weeks. Last night was the first night I actually slept, but I'm doing good. How are you guys doing?
Well, these guys to which he refers are the panel regulars. Of course, we have Jason Gurin. How are you today, Jason?
I'm well, thank you. You guys?
Excellent. Okay, and Keith Bliss.
Sir.
Yay!
Yay.
How's it going, Keith?
Oh, another wonderful day in Oz.
Another one. Yeah. Okay. Today we have, as I mentioned previously, Fantastic Four versus X-Men, the classic 1987 story. Now, going based on the last episode, which was X-Men versus Avengers, I'm going to make a mild comparison here because the stories were pretty much released approximately at the same time. I'm going to just come out and say it. Dave, you got lucky with this story because we had Greg on the last one and we as comic book nerds were bored out of our minds reading that thing. Like I'm like, okay, when is this thing going to end? And of course, Greg, who was gracious enough to show up on the podcast, was like, yeah, I don't think I'm ever going to read a Marvel story ever again because that was awful. But now we have this one. We have Fantastic Four versus X-Men, which to me, I thought it was a great story. I thought it was like, I'm sorry, Dave.
As an outsider, I have to agree. I'm not a comic book guy, and I know that's one of the reasons you asked me to join on because you wanted like an outsider's view.
Right.
And I got to say, it was entertaining. Like I was sitting there reading through them, and I was like, "Oh, what's going to happen in the next one? What's going to happen in there?" I thought it was interesting.
I mean, if you're interested in reading further, I should warn you, it can be a little hit or miss. This one was definitely a hit. Like this was like on the nose, 4 issues. There was no filler throughout any of it. Okay, fine, a little bit, but like really,
it was a page.
You barely noticed the filler. Like there are certain things that happen that don't need to, but even the unnecessary parts are still kind of interesting, to me. Now I'm gonna go around and I'm gonna say, Keith,
sir,
you just read these books, like you just finished them like a couple of hours ago. So
yes.
what was your overview of the whole story here?
Yes.
What was your experience reading this for the first time?
It was interesting because this was, like I said, this is my first time running through it. So I'm very much a fan of the 80s style of artwork, but going back and looking at it now, it's very cliche in a lot of aspects. It was a good read. There was a little filler, like with She-Hulk and Thing smoking in a library. I'm like, what it's definitely an 87 type of thing, not a 90s or 2000 thing. So I'm like, certain things don't age well, but by and large, it was a fairly good read. Some of the stuff was like the dialogue between young Franklin and his parents was a little, product of its time. But otherwise, I enjoyed it. I'm with you. It was a fun read. It flowed relatively quickly. Everybody was just angry all of the time in this 4-issue story arc, which was hysterical.
Right.
But again, they had to keep the story moving, so they always had to have people jump to these weird conclusions.
Either be angry or be doing something productive.
Yeah, like Mr. Fantastic was chronically depressed and having like a constant anxiety attack through 3 of the 4 issues. So I was like, well, it is what it is. I get it because they had to like knock him down a peg and then like have him regain his self-confidence.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, otherwise it wasn't terrible. Like, would I read it again? Maybe. Would I recommend it to people? Definitely, especially if you like that time frame of comics, which I know a lot of people do have like their niche, like either like the 70s, 80s, 90s, and so on and so forth. So if you're an X-Men fan from back in the day, 100% read it.
Cool. Jason, your overview of the story.
I definitely enjoyed this one way more than the Verse of Avengers. I thought it was more of a fun read. Everything kind of flowed together, whether it be the silly arguments that the heroes needed to have in order to fight each other and move the story onward. But for me, I guess it might be a product of how many comics I read.
Right.
just and how many more stories I've read past this point. So I just felt like as much fun as it was, there wasn't any like real twists or any situations that we couldn't really predict and see coming. And clearly I thought the whole point of this 4-issue series was to have a way to bring Kitty back and not have it be as the mainstay X-Men series that was out at the time. So if you were reading the X-Men at that time, you're like, man, I better read this series or else I'm not going to know what's going on with the main character here. And, all these years later, we kind of know a lot of it now.
So yeah, you know it.
So just to be clear, because I've been drinking and I read it a week and a half ago, Kitty was the one who was turning into kind of a ghost. She was
Shadowcat.
Okay.
Shadowcat.
That's it. Okay.
I have
this
a
point
tattoo
in the
of
story,
her.
she's 14, and presently she's in her mid-20s and goes by Kate Pride. So the growth of the character has been quite a bit over the years.
Yeah, I suppose so, right? I mean, you have to understand that she had her own series with Wolverine, and she got her hair cut really short in that. So she's been through it. She's been through it. She was like brainwashed and got her hair cut and all that. So anyway,
she's one of many teenagers that Wolverine has groomed over the years, from Kitty Pryde to Jubilee.
He's a grooming.
Dave,
Rogue, I believe.
Dave, our now current non-comic book reader, what was your experience with reading this 4-part series? And from what I understand, you read it a week and a half ago and you blasted through it. You were just like, boom, done.
Yeah. Despite I know we joke about it. I brought it up on the show before.
Right.
It is surprising to many people, but I actually do read a lot.
Right.
So I know it doesn't show, but I actually do. So I'm a pretty high speed reader. But I enjoyed it. I thought it was fun. I thought it was funny how angry they are. It reminds me of a group of, and I can say this because as a Cuban, I'm allowed, a Cuban family gathering. That for some
all right,
reason,
everyone take a drink.
That's
Dave
right.
Said,
it's the first time.
Have a shot.
Dave said Cuban.
First time. It's just like everybody starts yelling for no reason, right? Yeah. And that's what it kind of reminded me. I'm like, everybody is so amped up. And especially in a situation where, this is like a thing science needs to solve. Mm-hmm. And science requires communication, not yelling and screaming. Science doesn't work that way, right? So, but it was fun. I empathized a lot with the struggles of what'd you say his name? Ben, the Thing?
Ben, the Thing, yeah. Ben.
I actually empathize like that with this guy when they start reflecting like on how, he's kind of like, he was in love with this one, can't have it. He fell in love and he can never really have that. And I found that to be quite empathetic.
It's messed up that his best friend stole his girlfriend too.
Right, exactly. Like he got screwed over in a lot of ways, So I did think that was kind of cool. I did reaffirm my belief that there's nothing sexier than a green chick. I don't know what it is. You can catch up on this, John. I know you've kind of filled my role on Greg's show, the Star Trek: The Undiscovered podcast.
Right.
You should watch the episode with the green chick dancing. I'm just going to say, I saw She-Hulk and I was like, oh yeah, it is a me thing. I definitely have a green chick thing.
Yeah.
I want to see a whole series. Just like, I want to see more of She-Hulk. 'Cause
There's a
it's-
show actually on
Right.
Disney Plus.
I
Yeah.
saw that. I found out about that, and I'm like, all right, something I can watch when my fiance is not home and I'm by myself. You know,
You need
I
to
don't
be
wanna
by
talk-
yourself for that. It's
not
okay.
really. I don't.
Yeah.
I really don't. I don't care. I don't care.
All right.
It's not like I'm shy.
No, I mean,
We wish you were.
You could do like a watch party.
Everybody
I,
does.
I
Dave.
suppose. You know,
Everybody
like.
does.
All right. Anyway, so now that we've done that, we're gonna go through each book kind of like briefly, and kind of talk about all this as a whole, so that the listener gets a better idea and doesn't have to read if they don't want to. So, like I said, this story was pretty jam-packed with stuff, so I condensed it best I could, which I think I did a pretty good job. So,
We'll be the judge of that.
okay, so
TBD.
TBD, right? Issue 1, called "Are You Sure?" ? Exclamation point. Franklin Richards has a nightmare wherein his father, Reed Richards, of the Fantastic Four, as you know, has killed the rest of the Fantastic Four as well as the X-Men, and claims it had to be done. Wolverine, who has not been killed just yet, is seen carrying Shadowcat's dead body, and he blames the whole thing on Reed, stating, and this is important, "We came to you for help. We trusted you, Richards. We put Shadowcat's life in your hands, and because of you, it was all for nothing." Wolverine tries to kill Reed, but dies because of his own injuries. Reed finds a book titled Reed Richards' Journal State University, which is always a creepy thing to see. Journal State University. Franklin implores his father not to read the book, but he does, and it transforms him into Dr. Doom. He tells Franklin that his father and his father's greatest enemy, Dr. Doom, are the same person. Now, this is the end of the dream. Franklin wakes up screaming, and his mother comforts him by asking him to help unpack shit. Franklin sees the book from his dream, which is actually Reed's college journal, which he thought was lost forever, and Franklin freaks out. Shadowcat is in a permanent state of, now let me know if you understand the reference here. DN clip, Duke Nukem. No? Yes, you get it. Basically, she can walk through walls. Her mass and all that stuff is not tangible. Whatever. So if this is So if this is not corrected soon, her atoms will disperse and she will cease to exist. Magneto tells the X-Men that Reed has come up with a device that could possibly reverse Shadowcat's permanent atomic dispersal thing. Longshot and Dazzler rescue someone who was lost at sea and take him back to their island. It is revealed that the journal contains a passage that indicates that Reed intentionally fucked up their mission back in the early 1960s that caused his team to become the Fantastic Four, which infuriates Sue, who is the Invisible Girl, who is Reed's wife. Reed's wife. Right. Thing and She-Hulk get into an argument about Magneto's villainy or heroism when a building blows up and collapses. As they try to hold it up, Magneto appears and pulls everything back up with his powers of magnetism. Magneto goes to the Fantastic Four headquarters and asks for Reed's help in saving Shadowcat. Reed reluctantly agrees, and they head to, how do you say this, Muir Island?
Mir.
Island. Okay, so it's a real place then.
I don't know that that's the island, but there was a famous naturalist named John Muir.
Okay.
And that's how you spell his name. So I'm assuming it's Mir.
Okay. So they head to Muir Island, where Shadowcat is being kept alive. On the way over, Ben assures Reed that the only time he ever made a mistake was when he caused his team to become the Fantastic Four, which makes Reed wonder if he really did sabotage the mission intentionally. Inexplicably, at least for now, Reed insists that there is nothing he can do to save Shadowcat's life. The team gets into a scuffle, and Wolverine says what he said in Franklin's dream. "We came to you for help, Richards. We trusted you. We put Shadowcat's life in your hands." And then he changes the last line to, "So you save her or you die." I promise, by the way, the following issues, the descriptions will not be quite so long. So,
well, you're painting the background here.
Right, exactly.
You're not just narrating
right.
the current, you're giving the background.
Exactly. All right, let's start. Jason, what first issue? Like, I'm used to the first issue just being like super introductory, but this whole thing was so jam-packed with shit. Like, Jason, what was your thoughts on the first issue here?
Once again, we're here with Magneto,
Mhm.
and he's basically our foil for the story for everything to unfold before us.
Okay.
The ever trying reform villain here who's just gonna bump heads with everybody, and then cause our two teams to basically fight with each other when they should really just be having a quick discussion. And this comic could have been over in 2 issues.
I was actually thinking that the comic could have been 5 or 6 issues because of how much shit was going on in it.
But I agree with Jason. If they sat down and
fighting
talked,
between heroes.
Yeah. If they sat down and talked, they wouldn't. So, okay. In Marvel, it just seems like such a common recurring theme where the heroes are constantly fighting with each other.
Very hot-headed.
It's just like, dude, come on, man.
It's the gamma rays.
The gamma rays. Fucking gamma rays. So, Dave, can we get your, because you're not the comic reader, you're not a comic reader generally. When you started this story and you got past the first issue, what were your thoughts? Were you like, I can't wait to get to the next part?
First impression. I loved the artwork for the opening dream sequence.
Oh God, it was so
I thought
creepy.
that was so the first panel, I was like, this is like, I've never taken enough drugs, and I've taken a lot to draw this shit. Like the backgrounds and stuff. It was really, really cool. It was also a little confusing for me because, again, I don't know, some of the characters and the players and all that stuff. But yeah, no, at the end of it, I was like, all right, I want to see what happens to this girl, and I want to find out about this. It's funny because you mentioned this a couple of minutes ago. You said that, Reed is an incredibly assured person.
Right.
And I remember, and it pops up later where Ben says to him, you know what, Reed? I do believe it, because if you thought this thing needed to be done, you would do it regardless of the consequence.
I'm glad you picked up on that, because that is something that I brush upon in a little bit.
Yeah. But I definitely was. I was very interested in seeing what happened next. All that, and part of it was also learning, the dynamic of the players for me, which is a little different than for you guys. Was learning who's who, and you start seeing, because they do a pretty good job, the writers, of kind of giving you the information of explaining what their powers are, and they give you some of the background, so you're not flying blind. You can actually figure it out as you go along, which I think is good.
Big thing in 80s comics is the exposition. They
So much exposition.
Really?
Yeah.
Really. So I think that's good, because then I can jump in and you know what I mean? So right. That's exactly right. And of course, the highlight, the Green Woman.
Of course. It is good. The exposition does get a little awkward sometimes, because
it's for the casual reader, clearly, but it works. Obviously,
you see like heroes, even villains, sometimes using their powers and just saying to themselves, I'll use my powers of magnetism to stop this. And it's like, okay, we know you have powers of magnetism. You don't have to say it out loud.
I thought that was funny when they were saving that building from falling over, how they're explaining everything they're doing. Right.
Yeah, it's funny. It's a little awkward, but that's what makes it so charming, I guess. Keith.
Sure.
You're the last one to talk about the first issue.
It was interesting. It had a lot of, as we were talking about, the exposition. That opening sequence with Franklin as a kid was very entertaining to read, because it was very much from a perspective of a child. And this was his Power Pack days. And those who've never read any of the comic books in the 80s and the 90s, the Power Pack was a bunch of kids in Franklin's age group that all had powers and abilities themselves, and he kind of ran with them for a little bit. They were good guys, nothing crazy. And that's where the red pants and the metal boots come from. But the interaction with him and his father, and how initially Reed blows him off and mom has to console him, like the typical mother hen and blah 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 stereotype, yada yada yada. It was good. And like we talked about, that the one random panel of She-Hulk randomly studying and things smoking in a library, and conveniently a building blows up across the street. Like that's a lot of convenience right there.
They never explained the building blowing up. Like, what
No,
the
not at
hell
all.
happened?
Like they like, and what's crazy is, you know, things like, I can't hold this up, and She-Hulk's like, I'm struggling. Like, you two were like some of the strongest beings in the Marvel universe. Thing is literally taking blows from the Hulk, and he's like, I'm struggling with this building. Like, shut up.
Well, you guys got to remember, you're a little bit younger than me, but this is the 80s.
Yeah.
You got to remember, this is the 80s. Buildings exploded all the time.
Yeah, fair. And it's New York City, so
it's New York City.
True.
And She-Hulk and Thing probably chain smoked at the time indoors at a restaurant or on an airplane.
Right, while power drinking.
You know that fucking Fantastic Four jet? That thing smelled like a fucking ashtray.
Oh my god,
guaranteed.
It smelled
like sweat and smoke.
It probably smelled like a pool hall or something.
Exactly.
You know, just like beer and cigarettes.
Beer, cigarettes, and children beaten by their parents in rage.
All of it.
All of it at one time. And that has a smell, by the way. That has
wet leather. Don't forget the wet leather from the belts.
And none of it smells like rich mahogany. I can tell you that.
No, not at all.
What? Okay.
The beating of the children in the jet.
Oh yeah.
Well, you haven't heard. John is probably sick of hearing it. My statement about that in the past, everything was terrible. The further back you go, the worse it is, and the children got beat even harder.
I mean, this was 1987. It was like, you know, I guess there was sort of like a transition at that point.
Dude, I used to smoke on the school bus to school.
Nice.
Like, that's...
Okay.
No, yeah, that was a thing. Anyway.
Issue 2. I'm sorry, what?
No, anyway, it was a lot of setup. So, and I get they had to do a lot of exposition, because if you hadn't read up into this point, you had no idea why Colossus was in a metal coma and Nightcrawler was out cold and all these characters were injured. So you kind of had to fill in the blanks a little bit, per se. So
I want to let you know why the B-level X-Men were there and not the A-level.
Right. Havoc in his weird pants and like sweater t-shirt combination, odd fashion choice from back then, but hey, whatever.
That was actually going to be the name
of the 80s.
That was going to be the name of a series, Havoc and his weird pants.
I don't doubt it's still I hear it's still in development. It's been in hell for a couple of years.
Nice. Development hell. So, issue 2, called Truth and Consequences. It is now revealed that Reed is unwilling to use the device to save Shadowcat, because even with testing, he still managed to put his team in extreme danger, and he's afraid it might happen again. The Human Torch, Johnny Storm, accidentally burns Storm's arm in the kerfuffle that is happening between the teams. At home, Franklin tells Sue that Reed will never be the same, and Sue expresses her hatred toward Reed because I guess I forgot to mention this, she read the journal.
Mm-hmm. You did mention
it. Did I mention it? Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah, I don't even know what the hell I'm writing to myself. So
story of my life.
Yeah. So she goes, "I hate you, Reed Richards. Damn you." And okay, so Storm tries to get Reed to reconsider. You know, the whole I'm not gonna do the thing to save Kitty Pryde, but he still refuses. Rogue says that they can get Psylocke to absorb his thoughts so that they can know everything that they need to know, but Storm expresses that would be very unethical, which was another theme that happened in X-Men versus Avengers. So I'm glad that they're keeping with the themes. The man that Dazzler and Longshot saved from the water turns out to be a robot who projects the image of Dr. Doom, which, by the way, I thought was an interesting reason that a robot had to be lost at sea and saved by these superheroes. But I mean,
I also find it weird that a robot smiled. That we're talking about that he had like an evil grin. Like, why would you do that? You're a droid.
You're a robot. Yes. Well, maybe it was like Dr. Doom smiling and controlling it that way, like a puppeteer.
That can happen.
So anyway, projected the image of Dr. Doom, who says that he can shave Shadowcat. Yeah, that's a whole other story. Who says that he can save Shadowcat by replicating Reed's technology. Skeptical and wondering what price they would have to pay, the X-Men are unable to make a decision on that front. Storm is rushed to the infirmary for her burn, excuse me, and Shadowcat blames herself. and wonders if it would be better to let herself die than allow the X-Men to be in Doctor Doom's debt. Back in New York, Sue has told the Thing and the Human Torch, Ben and Johnny, about the journal entry, and they angrily confront him, wanting to know if what he has written is true. Reed says it sounds like his style of writing, but he does not remember if it was actually true. They all know that Reed always went out of his way to do what's best for the greater good, regardless of personal consequences. Nice catch, Dave. And in the
It's
end,
what I do.
And in the end, the X-Men decide to accept Doom's offer. All right, let's start with Keith in this
Yes.
in this second issue.
It was. This is where like it just flies off the handle. You know, the X-Men go to the Fantastic Four and they come to Muir Island and just all hell breaks loose, and Wolverine is like rage murder ready immediately the minute Reed says no. He just flies off the handle and tries to kill the dude, and then Human Torch jumps in and he sets him on, Storm on fire. So it's like an insane, like the dumbest thing triggered everything, and it was like a perfect storm of shit to happen or go sideways as much as possible.
Yeah.
And what's crazy is that droid that you see talking, my brain automatically jumped to a Sentinel, not a Doombot or some Doom android. I'm thinking like, this could be a Sentinel because he's like, I've infiltrated the mutant stronghold and mutant this and mutant that. He doesn't say X-Men or anything of that nature. So I'm thinking like, well, shit, this is gonna, be a Sentinel. And then all of a sudden you see the hologram of Doom and he's like, excellent, blah, 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 blah. And then they continue on. And then no matter what they're doing, they immediately stop and see this robot. And you're like, all right, we have to go attack this thing. And then the hologram comes out and he's like, I'll fix what he can't do, which in my brain should have been a red flag. Like you're, with the X-Men or whatever. And you're like, he says no and he says he can do it.
Yeah.
That seems a little suspect.
The hero says no. And the villain says, no, I can use the same exact thing and it'll work.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Like that should have just been like, okay, wait a minute. Let's see what's going on here.
I want to say something about Dr. Doom. So I'm going to.
It's your show. You do what the fuck you want.
You have that prerogative.
Right. I love that Dr. Doom's metal mask changes facial expressions that correspond to his moods. I love that. I think that is a wonderful thing. Anyway, so I just wanted to say that.
I think it's fantastic.
True. It does. Like he actually shows emotion in the mask. Yeah. Which was an 80s thing, because as he got, time progressed, it's fixed, and all they ever do is zoom into his eyes, and he's either angry eyes or happy eyes. His face doesn't change too much.
You mean the mask does not shapeshift depending on mood? All right, Jason.
I actually enjoyed issue 2. I gotta say the beginning part with the I guess necessary battle between the heroes is always what kind of just drags me down a little bit. But once we got past all that, I thought the issue progressed nicely. I really liked the artwork later in the issue, where they just kind of took panels of like what the X-Men were doing, and then they'd show back at what the Fantastic Four were doing, and back and forth, and their whole feelings, and Reed just really so unsure of himself, so unlike Reed, and this whole time you're thinking like, what the hell is going on with this journal? I'm like, because he thinks he wrote it, he's saying his subconscious wrote it, and you're like, is this even possible? And then the whole Doom twist, I would say that would be the one twist that actually got me, because as I was reading it, when Longshot saved the guy from the river or the ocean, I did not think Doom at all. I don't know why that wasn't on my brain. It should have been. It's a Fantastic Four book. It should have been obvious that Doom was going to be somehow involved in this. But I don't know why I was reading it. I was like,
it's not
of course he's got to be involved.
It's not a sequel to the Titanic, right? It's they're saving this guy because that's going to drive the story. They're not just going to be like, hey, we did a nice thing and we saved.
I don't know. I was thinking more along the lines of what Keith said, where it was like an infiltration. They finally got to the X-Men's island.
We saved a feller from the water, and it's good for you guys. Thanks for doing that.
Well, they are the good guys. That's what they should be doing.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, but they had that whole like no good deed ever goes unpunished, and that's although. Would you say that that's a reward because Dr. Doom is like, I can take over and I can save Shadowcat? So,
same way Magneto, he's trying to reform as well. which they've done on many occasions with him as well over the years.
With Doctor Doom.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. Okay.
When he takes over Iron Man's armor and becomes the infamous Iron Man.
Whoa, don't jump ahead. That's we have like
Years,
several decades
years.
to get there.
I'm not ready for that. I'm not ready for that.
Neither
That's
am
a
I.
2020 story. Whoa, let's progress.
Whoa.
We're at 87.
Settle
right.
down, Jason. Relax
Okay.
yourself.
All right, sorry, I'm getting all excited.
And we come around to Dave to talk about his opinion of the second issue.
Not enough She-Hulk in this issue.
You know, that was the
Not enough.
the New York Times quote.
Am I the only guy? Like, show of hands. Anybody else? Green chick? No.
I mean, not specifically.
I got middle
that she-
fingers from Keith, so
Yeah.
that says no.
Doesn't bother me. No, that was when She-Hulk was in her super sexy phase.
Yeah, it's not
Oh.
specifically
She was
Before the
naked in
steroids.
one of the
that
panels.
she's green. That's whatever. She's obviously very attractively drawn, and like they use a lot of her sex appeal to make.
She would
people-
break you, Dave.
Oh yes.
God, I hope so.
Like stop turning Dave on. She could kill you with her thumb.
I haven't had a major injury in exactly a year, so
Oh, boy.
I'm due.
Let's hope you don't encounter the She-Hulk.
Ew.
It's a good way to die. It's a good
Or
way to die.
Shulky, as
So-
like you call
Shulky,
her.
yeah.
Oh, I
And-
heard.
and John
Yeah, I
Storm.
caught that Shulky. I was like, oh,
Oh,
it's kind of
Shulky.
cute. Yeah.
Oh,
So wait,
I thought that was cute.
so Dave, is that all you have to say about
No.
No?
So I actually have some questions.
Okay.
So Doctor Doom. So I gathered
His
it shows
giant
up
armor.
later.
Mhm.
He's got this old rivalry with the stretchy guy. Reed, thank
Reed,
you.
yeah.
And I'm thanking myself because I remembered it alone. So he's got this old rivalry. Like, what's his? So I know Reed, he stretches,
Mhm.
right? That's his like. So did Doctor Doom? Did he get blasted with gamma rays too? Did he get superpowers, or he's just
Didn't
like
you
really
say you
smart?
read this?
I don't remember how. Like, did they give?
Stop day
Doom's-
drinking.
Dr. Doom's power
Never.
is that he like burned his face off and now he has to wear a mask and now so he can take it off and just scare people like Medusa.
There was literally like a 2-page
How do I not?
exposition.
I'd say the pages were stuck together, but I read it on an e-reader.
Ugh.
So I don't know. Maybe somebody
Maybe
was
your
looking at the
e-readers were
She-Hulk.
stuck together. I don't know.
Ew, She-Hulk. I guess somebody got carried away. Oh my god.
Okay.
But I miss.
Why
All
is
right,
it all
so he
sticky?
has
Ew.
his face is his superpower. Is that right?
No. That was a joke.
Okay. So
I don't know.
Is he like Batman?
Does
Like he
Dr.
doesn't have
Doom have-
superpowers, but
Does he have superpowers?
I'm asking.
He
about
he is next in line for the Sorcerer Supreme.
Okay.
He's magic.
He has
so
magic.
he does. He
He
does
has
have
magic powers.
Okay.
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 And a lot
All right.
on it.
Okay.
I'll tell
And
you
armor.
I'll tell you what he can do. He can in his first appearance, he forced the Fantastic Four to go back in time and be pirates. So, he has that.
I mean, who doesn't? Like, was it really that much of a stretch?
Who doesn't love that?
Who doesn't want to be a pirate for a day? It's funny. It was one of the things I was reflecting is how everything is amplified because of gamma rays, right?
Right.
So let's say I'm out with the four of you guys, right? And we get into a disagreement with somebody, and John, you and I have been friends for a couple of years. Keith's all right, and then we get into an argument, and we start pushing a little bit. Because remember, them flipping over and throwing airplanes on each other is the equivalent of me pushing Keith, right?
Right. Okay.
So, and I get hurt, right?
Uh-huh.
Like Storm got burned, right? It was Storm that got burned.
Mhm.
Yeah. Storm.
Yeah. I don't know that I'd be worried. I don't know that you should be worried that I'm going to hold a grudge. Like, we've been through shit together. They're both good guy teams. I'm sure they've had fights with other villains together at some point, right? So they have common enemies. Am I really I don't know that you would need to be worried that, oh man, I pushed Dave and he cut himself when he fell over the bar stool,
So what I've kind of noticed is that their emotions, they kind of like go on a scale of like high to low based on what's convenient to the story. So like something that you wouldn't necessarily expect, like Johnny Storm feeling super guilt about burning Storm. That's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
Storm and Storm. Okay.
Storm on Storm act.
Yeah, Storm on Storm action.
I'm sure
yeah.
there's a website for that. And
Yes.
we don't know.
Well,
yes.
don't
We're not
forget
gonna go
Wolverine and Storm had a thing in the 80s, so there was that too.
It's like Wolverine has just made his way through every female hero in the series.
I mean, he's
So-
1,000 years old. Of course he has.
Of course.
I didn't know that.
Yes. So yeah, that answers that. So are we good to move on?
Let's do it.
All right.
Ooh.
Issue 3. By the Soul's Darkest Light. The X-Men travel to Latveria, where Doom completely heals Storm's burn. Shadowcat has been placed in a cylinder to slow the atomic dispersal, but she struggles over whether being rescued is worth knowing what it will do to her team and attempts suicide in order to resolve their plight. Franklin, who has the Doctor Strange-like ability to be somewhere consciously while his physical form is sleeping elsewhere, sees this and begs her not to let herself die. Shadowcat can't talk because of her state, and at first she can't hear Franklin. I'm not sure what makes the transition, but she's finally able to hear him, and it convinces her.
Psylocke.
I'm sorry.
Psylocke.
Oh, right, Psylocke. Right, yeah. You're. Wow. Okay. I'm gonna edit that, but not really because I don't give a shit.
This Jason guy, I like him. It's
yes.
first time I met him, John, but he's good. He's good.
He's listen.
You're good, you.
I'm not even going to try to pretend that I'm the driving force on this show. I'm just the host. I'm the host. Keith and Jason are the ones who know the things. I don't know shit. I don't know jack squat. I write notes. So anyway, where was I? Okay, so
How
finally
he suddenly started communicating.
she does hear him, and it convinces her to go back to safety. Doom says he will be able to restore Shadowcat's full health by tomorrow, quote unquote. Reed sees that Franklin is struggling and comforts him back at home in New York. Sue, who has turned herself invisible to watch, realizes that Reed is exactly who she thought he was, and that he couldn't have possibly been the one who wrote that journal entry that has been tearing the team apart. Ben goes to a bar and realizes that he lost his girlfriends to other members of his own team and can't have kids. On his way out, he saves a baby from a burning vehicle and is considered a hero, but accurately details that given the ability to do what he did, not doing it would actually make him a piece of shit. So, there's that. Johnny's girlfriend, Alicia, whatever, alleviates his guilt of burning Storm by saying that people make mistakes and that his flame powers are a tool, and it's just a matter of how he decides to use them. Back in Latveria, Doom prepares to restore Shadowcat back to normal. Reed reiterates that his reluctance to Jesus fucking Christ, his reluctance to save Shadowcat mirrors the mistake he made when he caused the team to become mutants. And while he is hesitant, he has decided to try to save her life. The rest of the team forgives him, and they go off to Latveria. You know what? Dave, why don't you go first on this one?
Worst choice you could have made. No. So I'll tell you one of the things I actually liked about this one is I started seeing the humanity of some of the the two characters, Reed and his wife, and his three characters and his son.
Right.
Because one of the things as an outsider, like I remember watching, I don't know, what was it? Avengers, not Endgame, the one that came before it.
The first one. Infinity War, right? Yeah.
Infinity War. Okay.
Yeah.
So Infinity War, I remember watching it. I'm not into this. My girlfriend's into it. She wanted to see it because she likes the characters and she likes X-Men stuff. So we go see it. It is the first movie that I ever fell asleep through. I've never had that happen before because what I felt like to me.
Not the first time you ever said that, right?
What?
It's never happened to me before.
Oh,
never happened.
No, I'm 51.
I'm sorry, that's never happened before. Okay,
yeah.
I'm ready again.
So
you're welcome.
Yes.
So I part of it was like I was looking at the movie. I'm like, it's one big fight scene. How many shots of four superheroes tumbling through and knocking over a building can I watch? I actually found it disinteresting. I was bored. I fell asleep. I've never done that before. But here, I see actual character. You see a guy, because I always wonder, like, what do you do in your free time when you're an Avenger? Right.
Yeah.
And you know, I'm a dad. I have kids I got to raise. I'm a mother. And I saw that part. And that actually was a cool way to round out what I was experiencing as I was reading this. It was very interesting to see that just a guy. I'm just a guy who can do this stretching thing, and I'm really good at science, you know. But ultimately, just a guy. And I thought that was really, really cool. I saw more of that internal development of the character. One complaint, not as much She-Hulk.
Yeah, you know, that's the big complaint. You know, like it is pretty much true though. Stan Lee, when he was developing these characters, was sort of like making I mean, I don't know if it was in direct response to, you know, DC heroes like Superman, Batman, like those kinds of things, where it's like they just go and they do their thing. Now Batman is just in a constant state of anger because his parents were killed. But you know, like
he should be in
Superman,
jail. He should be in jail.
right?
That guy's dangerous. But go on.
Right, exactly. Like, you know, like superheroes were just kind of like, yes, my job is to go and fight evil and like, and everything is wonderful and great.
Exactly.
And it's like, okay, well, what if we make the heroes human so that people can relate to them? And that is what Stan Lee did. The Batman and his parents getting killed, I'm not sure how relatable that is to most people, but you know, like the whole
I agree.
Personal issues, like I don't have enough money to pay my rent, and you know, I'm struggling with the ethics of a situation and all that kind of stuff. Like that's like, oh damn. So you could have all the power in the world and you could still be struggling like crazy like that. So yeah. So cool. Is that it, Dave?
I'm done.
All right.
More She-Hulk. That's
let's go on to Jason. Jason, is issue number 3.
My favorite part of issue 3 was the Thing. I really enjoyed the part where he was in the bar.
Yeah.
Trying to get drunk even though he can't. And
Yes.
all the other patrons in the bar and the owner of the bar just basically like you know, on their tiptoes around him, just be like, oh, please don't let a fight break out. There's a superhero here. Either a villain and this bar's gonna get broken again. Like every other panel of the owner, he's just like, you can see him sweating. He's like, hey, are you all right? Another beer? Anything I can do for you? You ready to go home?
But you know, it's funny that because again, what I was talking about, it's real.
Yeah.
Right. It's a real thing. You got a guy who just wants to drown his sorrows. Most of us have been there, you know, and you know, you've been there and you've been out and you're like, this guy's kind of volatile.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Yep.
He's volatile, but he's like a blue-eyed, gentle giant.
Yeah.
You just don't want to make him angry. That's all.
Trouble will follow, as we saw as soon as he left the bar.
Oh yeah.
Right.
For me, as I was saying before, was predictable. I mean, I enjoyed it, but predictable because as soon as you know what they were going for as soon as he got out of the bar.
Oh sure.
Again, New York City in the 80s.
Keith, was it predictable?
Again, New York City in the 80s. It was to an extent. I did appreciate certain things, such as, you know, Reed talking to Franklin and consoling him when he's having a nightmare, and actually being a father for once instead of telling his son to go play in traffic. And then Sue even acknowledging that based on how he's talking to Franklin, that magic book of mystery couldn't have been written by him because it just, the tone and just everything about it was different from his personality. I was gonna say persona, from his personality. So she's starting to see like kinks in this story and realizing that maybe it might not be what it's cracked up to be. And she kind of like, all right, I'll give him another shot. And all through this, you have little Franklin having these nightmares, and it's because of his powers that manifest as he sleeps. He's doing the astral projection, talking to Kitty Pryde. He's back to the human thing. He's seeing his father struggle, all this crazy stuff. And then, yes, you have this sub story of each one of the Fantastic Four dealing with this air quotes truth that, you know, Reed actually knew this was going to happen and designed the ship to make them turn into these mutants and the Fantastic Four. So Ben tries to go drown his sorrows, which he can't, but they never really explain that. But whatever, comic books.
He's a giant Rock Man, I imagine it's difficult for rocks to get drunk.
Well, that's something they retconned fairly recently. He's only rocky on the outside. He's really gooey on the inside.
I see. Yes.
So
This conversation's very weird.
yes, we go off topic all the time. It's
little bit,
very
yeah.
entertaining.
Listen, Dave, it's basically it's bullshit hour with comic books. Like that's
Oh yeah, it's the
bullshit
only
about
reason to
comic
tune in. It's the only
Yeah,
reason to
right.
tune in.
That's how the thing goes to the bathroom yet. So at least we didn't go.
God,
that's
no,
true. When you
thankfully.
if the thing gets scared, would you say that he's shitting bricks? Like, and does that mean that he's like shitting his own skin?
Does he
I'm
need
just
a
thinking.
bidet?
I'm just thinking about the poor toilet when he has to drop a deuce. Like, do they have like the enhanced like Fantastic Four? Like, there's like the bathroom for two of them. Reed and Sue. Then you have
Reed
the
built
flame
this-
retardant one.
He's
'Cause,
got a toilet that's made of reinforced with steel rebar concrete.
Something. Yeah, you have like the asbestos room. So when Johnny's in there and he rips ass, he just nukes the entire room.
Have they
Oh
ever
my
done
God.
it? Have they ever done an issue on shit like this? Like, what
No.
if this? Like, see, that.
Well,
I would read that. I would actually pay cash money to see these kind of things happening. So recently on Star Trek, all right, so on one of the new Star Trek series, there's this character. She comes from this planet where they're all incredibly strong, and she
Okay.
falls in love with one of the pilot, the navigator of this starship,
yeah.
and they're dating, and he's constantly in sick bay with broken bones. And I love that because that's really what would happen. You would be like,
that. Yeah.
I'm fucking my boyfriend up. I mean, thank God they have, all this kind of tech that they could fix them. But I would be very interested in those. Like, what would it mean if this were real and explore that? That would be
yeah.
a hoot.
Well,
And,
they've come out with comic books like Damage Control, which is a Marvel thing. They've tried to have like the weird, like, what do they do on a Tuesday kind of shit going on in some of these stories, and they've had like the random sub stories. But I mean, at the end of the day, I don't want to see Thing drop a deuce and blow up a toilet or whatever. I want to see Thing punch a hole through a Doom bot because
I don't know
I can
why
go to
you're
the
such
bathroom
an
and blow it up
unhappy
myself.
person, Keith.
I'm an angry
Well,
person.
Yeah, the damage control is basically like, so what really happens? The superheroes, they blow up buildings and all that shit, and then the people get really annoyed and angry and like they have to reconstruct, and it's funny. But I was gonna say, the flame, the Human Torch, when he blows up the bathroom, it's taken quite literally. It literally blows up the
to a whole
bathroom,
different
yes.
to a whole different.
Oh,
Hey,
yes.
but speaking of which, did you ever hear about the? I think it was like last year. The guy who was like down south somewhere. They called the police on him for a bomb threat in the Walmart or Target bathroom. Did you ever hear about this story?
No.
So they get this call and the police swarm the place. Blah blah blah. They grab the guy because he had made a bomb. Someone reported he had made a bomb threat. And when they interrogate the guy, who's like, "I didn't make a bomb threat. What I told the guy when I came into the bathroom was coming out, I said, you better clear out of here because I'm fixing to blow this place up."
Oh,
he actually got
I
in trouble. I hope that's how I die.
All right. You know what? I hope for you. So, rounding the corner now to
Turning the end.
to the fourth and final issue of the story. So this was kind of weird to me, like singing a rather morbid reprise of that Sound of Music song. Shadowcat has given up hope, but Franklin informs her that the Fantastic Four are on their way. Sue infers that Doom is the only other person who knows Reed and can come close to his intellect. She surmises that Doom was probably the one who wrote the journal entry for them to find. There is a whole song and dance where Doom and Reed's history is detailed and how Doom resents Reed's superior intellect and that he blames Reed for his own experiment having gone wrong. Reed once again doubts himself and wonders if he can actually save Shadowcat, and that failure to save her would be too much for him to take. Doom begins the process to save Shadowcat, while Magneto explains to Storm that his daughter was killed in a fire, and in an emotional state, he uses his magnetic powers to pull down one of the robot guards. And he like sculpts it into like a statue of his wife and daughter, interestingly. Doom scolds him, telling him that his magnetism is interfering with the technology needed to save Shadowcat. Of course, immediately after, Magneto uses his magnetic powers to try to force the Fantastic Four's jet to land. Because of this, Shadowcat's recovery can't be guaranteed, according to Doom. Some more silly fighting between the heroes ensues before they realize that they're being stupid and begin working together. Nail biting commences as Shadowcat begins to fall apart. Reed tells Doom that he has made a miscalculation and he must stop what he's doing immediately. After a brief disagreement, Doom and Reed work together, but Doom never actually cared about whether Shadowcat lived or died. In the end, Reed overcomes his self-doubts and manages to save Shadowcat's life with no help from Doom, ultimately excusing the X-Men from any debt to Doom. As it turns out, Magneto's interference played a part in saving Shadowcat. Reed realized that her healing had to be gradual. Doom's process would have made it instantaneous, which would have killed her. Sue confronts Doom, who all but admits that he planted the journal for them to find. There's a few panels after that, but whatever, that's the end of the story. So, Keith, what'd you think about this ending?
It was an ending. It was one of those, they had to tie up the story in the loose ends somehow.
Mhm.
I did like the fact that you saw some of the struggles through all of it, like Doom and Reed arguing, and it takes Franklin to be like, hey, stop, we're trying to save a life. And literally everybody's like, oh, let's listen to a 7-year-old who can, blow up the universe. So
I think he's younger.
I get it. They needed something to like reel them back in. And the fact that Reed is arguing with Doom and they're going back and forth, and he finally explains it in a calm and rational, level-headed manner. And they're like, oh, I see your point. Yes, that is the thing. I didn't realize it because, or I didn't think it was going to be an issue. Granted, it was kind of like hand wavy where Reed is like, I can do the math in my head faster than a computer. And I'm like, all right, fine. We need somehow to for you.
It was the 80s. It was the 80s.
The 80s, yeah, everything.
No, fair.
And computers were a lot slower then too.
Yeah, they needed something for him to gain his confidence. So I get it. They had to okay, we'll make it so he can do the math faster than a computer because the human brain works faster or some malarkey. And that's what they went with. And I was like, all right, that's okay. And then where Sue confronts Doom at the very end, and he's just very nonchalant, like, here, try the caviar.
Yeah, try the caviar. Yeah.
And she's not, trying to talk to him about this, and he just keeps blowing her off. And she's like, see, you're answering my question by not answering my question. He's like, well, here, it's very yummy, delicious, and blah, blah, blah. And then she makes that comment about, you've never gone toe to toe with me, and you don't know how you think you know how my powers work, but in reality, you don't. And if we were going to fight like you fought, you wouldn't stand a chance, which in reality has come to pass that her powers are much stronger than people have even realized. Like she can take down Galactus, which is mind-boggling, but makes sense when they explain it. Like they show you the math, and you're like, oh yeah, makes perfect sense. So she could easily kill Doom if she,
if she played by his rules, as she says.
Right. If she played by his rules, as she says, she could strike him dead in like 2.5 seconds. He had nothing he could do about it.
Right.
So it's the fact that he kind of like, you even see the hesitation. He's like, like you see it in his eyes, but he just keeps going. And then they just all kind of like walk away. And even the X-Men are like, something's going to pop off. And everybody starts to like kind of ramp up, and then they, squash it. So everybody gets back to their happy, jovial selves. Well, it wasn't a terrible ending. It was very satisfying. And yes, Kitty Pryde was still in her phantom state. So eventually she will, as she said, get back to normal. And even Franklin says, hey, can I come and visit sometime? And she's like, I'd look forward to that, which is kind of weird because he's like 7, she's like 20.
They're gonna dance together. Well, she's 14.
You know what I mean?
She's 14, and I think he's 4, actually, 4 or 5.
I think he's 5, and she's 4.
And Skywalker situation right here.
Yes, very much so.
It's strange, but I don't. Obviously, she's a 14-year-old girl. He's a 4-year-old boy. I'm thinking, okay, they're just kind of like they established a closeness. that has nothing to do with anything inappropriate. I think it's on the level.
He
I support
probably
it.
had a crush on her, but
Yeah.
again, it's a 4-year-old. It's not a
Right.
crush like when one of us gets a well, not
Right.
especially not me, because that's just degeneracy, and no one should know about it.
If
But at
any,
a 4-year-old,
Mhm.
you know, it's just like, oh, she's pretty, and
Yeah.
that's just, they don't know what to do with it, you know.
Right, exactly. Right. So yeah, that's it's kind of cool, I suppose. You know, I did like the dynamic between the two of them because, you know, through the whole thing, Kitty Pryde, Shadowcat, whatever her name is, she was like she wanted what would be best for everyone, you know, even if it meant that she would have to die. And I respected it, especially from like a 14-year-old who is like, wow, that's quite the sacrifice. And this is it, you know, you're going to be a superhero. You have to be willing to sacrifice yourself for the greater good.
So
And
my question is about
Mhm.
Shadowcat, and again, you guys know because you read more of this stuff than I do.
Yeah.
Is she like at that point like done some shit? I don't mean like in a creepy way. She's 14. She's underage. I don't need to know those things. I'm
Okay.
talking about like, has she been in battle?
Oh yeah,
You know,
that's how
like,
she's. That's why she's in this state, is because of this battle.
okay,
Yeah.
all right. So it's more plausible to me then, because then she goes like, I don't want these guys being in debt to him, because
Mhm.
she knows what
She
that
gets
really
down
meant.
in it.
then.
She fights.
Yeah,
It's the kind of situation where like if you do survive it because of Doctor Doom, you would just be living with that constant guilt of like, you know, I survived and now, you know, all these people, I don't even
Yeah.
know if she herself would be in his debt too, but you know.
Yeah, okay.
So there's that. Okay, so Jason.
Pretty, you know, they wrapped it all up pretty nicely in issue 4 there.
Mhm.
I got to agree with Keith. I thought my favorite part was the end with Sue and Doom, and the constant reiterating that he has caviar. That's
Yes,
really good.
caviar, yeah.
I will answer no questions that you ask me, but if you want to have some caviar, please do.
Yeah,
So,
don't forget to try the veal.
confirmed the whole journal thing throughout.
Yeah.
You know, as soon as we saw that journal, as soon as we saw Doom, we put it all together, and
Yeah.
now they've kind of put it in a bow for us.
It's funny because like Doctor Doom is considered to be one of the most dangerous people in the universe, and it's like, so what's he doing? He's like fucking with some dude's head by playing a prank. Like, how dangerous? You know, hey,
Yeah.
was it you who planted the journal? Try some caviar. How dangerous.
And also, what I took from this issue is that anytime going forward, the FF should just bring their
Yeah.
son with them, because Doom won't fight him.
Hey, there you go.
Well,
Until he grows older.
5-year-old, I'm not going to argue with you. You're right. So,
And
Well,
and
that's what
Dave-
happens with Valerie. Their daughter is
Yeah.
kind of the same scenario where she kind of like Doom is the literal godfather of Valerie
yeah,
Richards.
I think he saves her life at birth or something like that.
Something
I
like
thought-
that, exactly.
yeah, Valerie.
Wait, what?
I thought she died when she was born, right? Yeah,
It's been retconned.
It's
different
all
one. Okay,
Yep, there's 2
Anyway.
of them.
I'm sorry. So Dave, your thoughts on the ending here?
Well, I'll tell you one thing I liked about the ending. It surprised me.
It was the end.
The She-Hulk?
No. I'm not even. You know what? I was purposely not going to say anything about She-Hulk.
Oh, we knew you were thinking it.
I was holding back. You're right. I was thinking about it. I can't.
All right.
I can't go on about it again. So I just met Jason. I don't want him to think that badly of me yet. Give it
But our
time,
fans
pal.
are fine. It's
Give
fine.
it time.
No big deal.
Give it time.
Oh, no, this is great.
Yeah, Jason, I'll tell you something about Dave. Like this, what you see is what you get. You're not getting anything different here. So this is it. Yeah.
Perfect.
So no, the ending actually legitimately surprised me, because the entire time
Mhm.
at this whole thing with Doom trying to help Shadowcat, blah blah blah, I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop. I'm waiting for him to pull something. I'm waiting for some attack of some kind. I did not see this kind of thing coming, and I was legitimately surprised. And you know, a good twist at the end, that came up, that there was no attack, there was no nothing. We ended up eating caviar together. Like, I never saw that coming. You know, the other thing I did notice is, and I guess the gamma rays amplifying it, that is the pettiest motherfucker I have ever seen. I mean, like Real Housewives of Atlanta. No,
Yeah.
this fucking guy.
Dr.
Because
Doom.
I want to be the smart one. I want to be the smart one. All these machinations because he got a 1598 on the SAT and Reed got the 1600.
Yeah.
What a fucking tool.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess you weren't part of the conversations from before, but it seems to be a pretty well recurring theme that the reason that villains lose a lot is because they basically fuck themselves over. Like their plans, like they go too far, they trip themselves up, and then everything just blows up in their own face. Like they kind of just defeat themselves. And it's because of that kind of shit. We're like,
Yeah.
yeah.
And it's not even like a real affront. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's not like Reed took it. It's like Jason. Jason bangs my mom, doesn't call her the next day. I have reason to be upset with Jason, right? I have reason
Because
to
of the
be
phone call, clearly.
Yeah, I'm not going to
Yes.
start my own evil country and attack the world like Dr. Doom does, but I have a legitimate grievance,
Uh-huh.
right?
Jason, Dave, Jason, by the way.
Yeah, welcome to the family,
like to
Jason.
introduce you.
But like this wasn't even a real affront.
Right.
It's like the kid on the playground, you know, stamping his feet, folding his arms, going, "No, I'm the big boy." That's literally what this is.
Pretty
Reed
much.
never did anything to him.
No, he didn't. But that's the thing. Reed never did anything to Doom. Doom, like, as a matter of fact, Reed tried to save Doom from making a horrible mistake,
What a guy.
But Doom would never admit that he did make a mistake. So when the whole thing just blew up in his face, literally, he blamed Reed Richards. It made no sense at all, but that's what villainy is, I suppose. It makes no sense.
Right. Like,
So, yeah.
That's like if you prevent me from fucking something up, and they knew each other as young people, like they were weren't they roommates or something like that in college?
Something like that.
First and second in college, and they had friendly banter amongst themselves. It was so advanced and so over the top that other scholars in the school could barely keep up with them.
Right. I remember that. Right.
And-
so these are two smart guys. They're
Right.
in the thick of it together.
Yeah.
You know, so if I'm going to make a mistake, you're my friend, right? Keith, you're like, dude, you cannot, what? It's a relative term.
Nothing. Huh? What?
It's a relative term.
Yeah.
So you loathe me less than most people do, right? So, and you prevent me from doing something stupid. I'm going to have to humble myself. I'm a big boy, right? And be like, yeah, I should have listened to you, Keith. That is how petty this guy is. That is crazy to me. But it's the gamma race. It's the gamma race.
Well, you got to remember they needed this when these characters were created way the hell back when. They weren't going for like the whole depth of character. If you think about it, look at Thanos. Why is he trying to kill the universe? Because he's trying to bang death. Like there was no like greater like epiphany. Like he's trying to save the universe. Nope, he's trying to get laid. Like that. He's doing to impress a chick. Like ultimately, it's very basic. Like you boil down to some really like minor shit. Like in this case, Dr. Doom is pissed at Reed because he proved him wrong or proved him right, depending on how you look at it. You know, and he's trying to get back with them and blah, 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 blah. Well, they introduced a character fairly recently in Fantastic Four who is supposed to be some other idiot that's trying to get back at both Dr. Doom and Reed Richards because he was the third smartest kid in school. And you're like, well, fuck, come on, guys.
Jesus Christ.
See, this is why everybody complains about this, especially my generation and older, because, you know, I'm a Gen Z and I'm teetering on a boomer, right? Participation trophies. Everybody should feel like a winner. Everybody should feel like when we wouldn't even need comic books.
Well, there you go.
Right? It would just be She-Hulk.
Yeah. Yep. The Green She-Hulk. All right. Now, let's do some plugs, and then I'm going to like pass out in front of the TV. So, Dave, where can people find you?
So you can find me on Facebook, Dave Aguilar. You can see me up there. You could see me on Instagram at basically just Dave. That's not a description, that's actually the name. Basically just Dave. Stop by, say hello. I appreciate it. Not in a plug. I just like making new friends.
Sure.
And then you can also see some of my writings. My writings are very different than what I do here, which is mainly for fun and chaos. There, it's all very depressing. Make sure you take your meds before you read it. But it's you can find my writing on it's ariesdesk.blogspot.com. Aries is spelled EYRIES.blogspot.com. Stop by, leave a comment, give it a thumbs up or thumbs down. I'm good with either.
No, or a thumbs in.
I'm not ashamed.
Hey, there you go. Keith.
Sir. Oh, where can you find me?
Stuffing things. Yeah, that's the
Stuffing things.
Yes.
Yeah, I really should have made that my handle on all of social media because that's like my running joke as to like whatever's going on. What are you doing? Stuffing things?
Stuffing things.
But I feel like somebody would take that wrong in like the worst way possible. So when I'm not here chatting stuff up, I'm on a podcast with a mutual friend of ours. It's called Happiness and Darkness. We discuss superhero movies, anything really related to comic books and superheroes. So this week we just recently did Batman versus the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles animated, which came out in 2019. You can find us on all major streaming platforms under Happiness in Darkness. We also have a Facebook page, Twitter handle. And if you want to hunt me down personally, because that's not creepy enough, you can find me on Facebook. It's Keith Bliss, like as in happy, but not really. I'm a black and white image of myself because I'm a very gray kind of guy.
Okay. And Jason?
You can find me on Facebook, Jason, last name Gurin, spelled Gurin. Come join our group, Comic Book Villains. And I'm thinking about checking out that new app called Threads. So maybe I'll be on there in a couple days.
Don't do it. It's a trap.
All right.
I have a few friends that have used it and they've kind of enjoyed it. So
Nice.
One of my favorite writers jumped Twitter for them. So that's why I'm thinking of heading over.
As for me, I'm John Seymour on Facebook, JON space S as in Sam, EYMOUR. I'm sitting behind a drum set wearing a Mickey Mouse shirt. And I'm not holding out any fingers, Dave. I'm sorry.
you should fix that.
Yes.
Any thumbs?
My thumbs? I don't know what I'm doing. I think I'm just kind of sitting there.
I think you're just sitting behind the drums, if I remember correctly.
Weird smile. So anyway, that's me on Facebook. This is my new show. The Hour of Comics is upon us. So email into the show. Please email into the show at the Hour of Comics is upon us @gmail.com. Very simple to remember. It'll take you a few minutes to type it out, but it'll be worth it because then I'll get your email. You know, tell me if you have any story arcs that you want me to cover, if you have any ideas, if you just want to say, hey, you guys sound really good, or you guys suck, what are you doing? That's that. Greg Vorob has a podcast. My friend Greg Vorob has a podcast called Star Trek The Undiscovered Podcast, which, have we all been on that one?
Nope.
No?
Nope.
Yes.
Negator.
Am I the only one who's been on it?
I've been on it too.
You've been on it. Okay.
Wow, they've really banished me to the second season. I feel so loved.
Hey, listen, man. Listen. It's like, it's an honor to be on the show, but, you know, it takes work. I got to watch a movie.
Oh, no, not that. Anything but that.
Okay.
I had to read.
That's
Words
true.
are hard.
I had to watch a movie and pay attention to the movie.
And stay awake.
And stay awake.
And stay awake.
This is
and there
not,
was no green chick. There's no green chick in that one.
This is not something that I normally do when I watch a movie, is stay awake. So, you know, it showcases my skills of maintaining consciousness.
John, you were very entertaining on that episode. I recommend everybody.
It was good. Yeah.
You like me on the episode? Oh,
yeah,
that's nice. That's okay.
Look at Johnny's blushing.
So, yes. So, if you are trying to find the episode that I am on Star Trek The Undiscovered Podcast, it is the episode about the Wrath of Khan. And the one before that is I guess the original story, Space Seed. So I'm on both of those episodes. So Space Seed is the introduction to Khan, and the Wrath of Khan is the sequel to Khan. And say Khan 7 more times, and he'll appear
all the cons
in your living room. I guess
I got one more thing, John, I want to tell you.
Sure.
One more thing. So I appreciate you having me on the show.
Mm-hmm.
So it's taking me out of my element. Gave me something new to enjoy. And I wanted to say, I got to show you. I got you something, pal. And I think you know what it is.
A bidet.
I do know what it is. Wait.
Yeah, buddy. You called it, Keith.
I was kidding.
Wait a minute.
That's
Wait a minute.
awesome.
Wait a minute.
I got you and Lara a bidet.
Did you actually purchase that for us?
I told you I was
slightly
going to get
used.
you a fucking bidet. I got you
All
a
right.
fucking bidet.
You got me a fucking bidet.
Oh, that's amazing. I was
And now-
kidding.
And if people are actually still listening,
I'm sorry.
this is going to be
That's the right response, Keith.
quite the shock. And it'll be quite the shock to me when I first use it. Okay, so speaking of, I would like to thank Dave Aguilar for removing himself from his element, reading all
bathroom.
four. Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. I don't know. Listen. I don't know. Dave might have been in the bathroom while he was reading these comics. Who's to say?
I honestly was not, which shocked me.
Okay.
Whoa.
Shocked you. Okay. Right. I'm sure you went as soon as you were done, though,
I did.
because you were like, all right, I need a bidet after reading that.
I
So-
needed a little squirt.
So thank you, Dave, for doing that. And thanks, Jason and Keith, as always, for making me look good when I actually have no idea what the hell I'm talking about. So that'll be that for now. So good night, everyone. We'll see you next time.
Good night, kids.
Good night, guys.